Hey, hello again from Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We're broadcasting here from Rigel Studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I can't read the teleprompter. This show is all about guns, related political issues, and self-defense. Fired Up is on our website, firedupwithbobirwin.com, and the American Guns and Glory Network. It's also on YouTube and numerous other media, TV, radio stations. A new show is posted every Thursday at around 5 p.m. Pacific time. The audio feed is rebroadcast for radio listeners Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network. You can check out KELY1230.com for a station in your area. Questions or comments? You can send an email to bob@firedupmail.com. Again, that's bob@firedupmail, one long word, .com. Or leave a message on my office recorder, 702-257-1060. That's 702-257-1060. If you leave contact information, we'll respond by email, text, or telephone. Questions directed to my guests can be sent to the same place, and I will forward them. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearm every week in the United States, rarely truthfully covered by any mainstream media. We always present a few for our listeners' education. Many of them are good shooting. Some are questionable. Sometimes they're obviously wrong, but they're all educational if you own a firearm, keep a firearm in your home for self-defense, or carry one on your body to defend yourself. Individual incidents are generally adjudicated under local law. So the advice here might not apply to listeners in different jurisdictions. Stories are often paraphrased by me for clarity, by translation from police jargon, lawyer speak, or regional accents into standard English. The incidents are as reported, except generally I omit the names of those participants other than the police officers or attorneys. My guest today is retired police detective Sergeant Michael Bunker. Mike, a bit of your background, if you would.
Hi, I was a police officer for 40 years with a major police department. During that time, I worked uniform patrol, night shift detective, where we handled almost every type of criminal incident that came up, some of which you were aware of.
Yes.
And I was in narcotics, and I spent my final years in organized crime, doing investigations.
Yeah, not in organized crime.
Not in investigating organized crime.
Okay, we got that. This first story comes from Fox 13 in Tampa Bay, Florida. A reporter named Catherine Hawley reported November 22nd, 2019 in nearby Lakeland, Florida. A father was shot during a custody exchange after he tried to fight his way into the home of his ex-girlfriend's partner. The Pike County Sheriff, his name is Grady Judd, said the child's father brought his mother with him to pick up his 2-year-old son for a court-ordered visitation. The child's father is under orders not to be in contact with the child's mother. So his mother, went to the door to collect the child. She returned to their vehicle to tell the child's father she was denied the ability to take the child. The child's father then ran across the yard to the front door. He knocks on the door and covered the peephole with his thumb. When someone comes to the door and opened it a crack, the child's father begins trying to fight his way inside. The sheriff said he hit the man's mother's boyfriend in the head with the door. The mother's boyfriend orders the child's father to leave several times. After several attempts by the child's father to fight his way inside, he backs up and starts to run away. At that moment, the mother's boyfriend shot the child's father, according to the sheriff's reports. The child's father then ran into the backyard. The released video ends there, the officer's video. The perp here was hit 5 times and collapsed and died in the backyard. 6 minutes after the first call to 911, the mother's boyfriend called 911 again to say he had shot the child's father. Sheriff Judd said the suspect was trespassing, committing a burglary, committing a battery, which are both serious felonies, and the mother's boyfriend had a right to protect himself in his home. This should not have happened, said the sheriff, but when you let your emotions take over, you can end up dead. The incident is being called justifiable homicide at this time, but the sheriff said there would be a full investigation into the incident. The shooter is not charged at this time. Some other details here so you can understand the why. The custody exchange was supposed to happen at the child's daycare, but the daycare would no longer take care of the child because they were afraid of the child's father. He had apparently been in there screaming and yelling and so forth. The sheriff added that the child's father was told by the dispatcher to wait for deputies to arrive to facilitate the exchange. He chose not to do that. He immediately ran to the house, as we've explained above. Given the overall relationship of the deceased was certainly a threat to the household, it appears that the very instant of the shooting, there was no immediate threat presented. Like most confrontations, the timing really matters, particularly here. Was there time for the shooter to react by holding his fire? That's the issue of speed here. And Mike, I know you've dealt with this in several cases. I've dealt with it numerous times in court cases.
The difficulty with a lot of the reporting is we report in a linear progression. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, in many incidents, it's not like that. It is an explosion of things that are taking place at the time. So if the guy at the door is confronted by the exterior male, he's fighting his way to get in. The individual on the inside perceives a threat, has been injured. A felony is taking place when he's trying to enter the room, and the guy on the inside decides that he is in imminent danger and decides to respond. The guy on the outside says, "Holy shit, I'm going to get out of here." And if they make the decision at exactly the same time, the guy pointing the gun and shooting it is almost certainly going to shoot the guy in the back or in the side. That's just human reaction if they are equal. And as for the 5 shots, it's incredibly difficult that once you decide to pull the trigger, that you're able to go, whoa. You know, I mean, it takes time for your head to overcome your physical reaction. So 5 rounds is, while a lot is not an overwhelming number, it's not like you had to reload. Okay,
No,
okay, that's facetious. I'm sorry.
There have been cases where they've actually reloaded and not realized
Yeah.
the fight was over. The timing here is crucial. As Mike was explaining, it didn't happen. Gunfights don't often happen in a particularly linear fashion. Everything happens at once. And when we go and try to write a police report or look at a video, and we separate this happened and this happened and this happened, in this case, the critical shooting, it happened at the same time. So
Yes.
was the guy
Was the guy in legitimate fear of his
danger
life?
when
Was
he
yes.
fired his gun? Yes. I worked a major case some years ago where this was the issue in a robbery of a jewelry store, and the only thing that saved the jeweler from a murder charge was the security cameras pointing at the door, and you see the guy going out the door, kind of stop in the doorway and then be hit, then react to being hit, which takes a split second.
Yeah.
But there was a muzzle flash caught in a mirror in the scene of the security camera pointed at the door. You can see the flash, and then you see the guy react. When you shoot somebody, they don't react immediately. Bullets don't hurt that much. It takes a split second or a second or 2 seconds for them to react. When you see the guy being hit, he's not a threat. He's not pointing the gun that he had. But the flash was 2 seconds before. When he had the gun in his hand, he dropped it as he got hit, which was 2 seconds later. And that flash reflection in the mirror showed the jeweler was correct in the shooting. He was in danger when he fired his gun. And this was a case that had tremendous litigation over it. Shooting a guy who was not a threat at the time you fired. Sometimes they are. Now we're going to have a word from some of our friends and associates. Don't go away. Freestyle Martial Arts, located at 5693 South Jones, right at the corner of Russell Road. My friend Goker runs that studio. They train UFC fighters. They have classes for children, adults, old folks like me. You can reach them at 702-551-9009. That's 702-551-9009. CCS Gunsmithing is run by my good friend Chris Eifelt. He runs the NRA, Friends of the NRA dinners. He's on Rainbow and Sahara. You can reach him, a fine gunsmith, at 702-365-1732. That's 702-365-1732. Next is Attorney Jerry Creed. Jerry, the slide will tell you that he does estate planning and all that, which he does. He's here because he also does firearms trusts, particularly Class 3 trusts. If you own a lot of guns or any Class 3 firearms that you wish to pass on to your heirs, you need to talk to Jerry to make sure your will or your trust is up to date. It changes by the minute. He's at 702-806-7777. That's 702-806-7777. There's an area here that I want to discuss as a separate issue. It relates largely to the story you just heard. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about the right of self-defense. Various jurisdictions have laws and rules and case law to determine if a shooting is justified. The larger issue to me is the human right to defend yourself and your family from serious injury or death. The details of each shooting are unique. There have never been two shootings that are the same in the history of the United States, anyway. While the details, the details are different. Every human has the right to life, with the obvious exceptions of self-defense and court-adjudicated sentences. A large number of cases involve law enforcement officers defending themselves from individual or from mob attacks, particularly right now in New York and Chicago. They're on the news every day. Civilians are expected to run away or hide if possible, but police are required to act to defend themselves and others. The split-second decisions cop makes cops make every day are constantly second guessed by the media, police chiefs, review boards, and of course trial lawyers seeking that hefty payday for themselves and their clients. I'm sure you've seen this type of thing happen, Mr. Bunker.
More often than not, it's self-defense is a very dicey subject. Like you have said, you have the not only duty but responsibility to protect your family. If you fear that they are in danger of physical harm or death, you can defend them. It has been easily adjudicated that you can no longer shoot a fleeing felon because they're just taking property. Property can be replaced. Good decision. But take the case in New York where some of the protesters thinks it's grinning and giggling to pour something over somebody's head, a police officer in particular, and that's not perceived as a threat. Well, it won't be perceived as a threat until the first time somebody pours acid or gasoline on somebody and causes serious injury and or death. After that, the next time somebody gets something poured on them, the likelihood of a violent response is going to be accelerated. It's going to be, that was a common practice years ago in New York where people, particularly in rooming houses, would make what they call lie patties. And they were made into patties and then were used against each other, but more likely or more consistently against police. You get hit with a lie patty, it causes a great deal of harm and is potentially life-threatening. You don't have much time to react. You've got no time at all. The most proficient draw and shoot people, or draw and shoot a firearm, is approximately 5/8 of a second. In reality, it's more like a second and a half. That's the reality. But the self-protection, it does not mean that you've got to, if a guy's coming at you and is attacking you and you don't see a gun and you've got a gun, well, you can't shoot him because he doesn't have an equal response to you. Not true. How many people have died with one hit to the head where they fell backwards and hit their head on some protrusion that was out there? Died. I know of several incidences where that has happened. And the individual was charged with murder. In one instant, no. What do you do? How do you respond? You have such a limited time to consider and respond.
That's the problem, and that's without even going into the other junk that we have of toy guns that look like real, so they paint black over the orange tip. It's against the law to do that, by the way. So their fake gun looks real. Drug dealers use them all the time, so they don't get the deadly or dangerous weapon enhancement when they're caught with drugs and a gun. The gun's fake, so it couldn't have hurt anybody. Usually they can get the DA to drop the charge because the gun wasn't really dangerous. Then you have the reverse of gangbangers and others painting a real gun red on the muzzle or red all over. So when they're confronted with the police officer believes it's a fake gun and hesitates before he fires and gets himself shot because the gun was real and the circumstances were made to deceive the officer. It is just getting incredibly complicated to adjudicate these cases because you see them from all sides all the time. That's why God made lawyers and the occasional expert witness to talk about reaction speeds and what really happens. You remember we had a case where a Metro officer years ago even reloaded
Oh, yeah.
when the kid that he was facing was not armed. Being belligerent and bouncing a basketball or something, as I recall. But he perceived a threat, fired, and went through enough rounds to reload his gun. I don't remember how the case came out. I think the department got sued over it.
Yes,
You know
they
that.
did. I don't remember what the particular results are. The difficulty with shooting is what you see in the movies is not what happens.
Yes.
You shoot somebody in the movies, they immediately drop to the ground. Does not happen. You shoot somebody, and depending upon the adrenaline dump they have, their relative health, how much of a strength they have, they could actually have received a mortal wound and still have 10 to 15 seconds to respond. Well, you can easily, with a semi-automatic revolver, empty it and reload and empty it again. Competition shooters do it all the time. It's not beyond the realm of what people can do. And gangbangers and professional criminals practice. You know, I mean, they don't just stick a gun in their belt, they practice with it. So, you know, they're as often as knowledgeable as law enforcement as far as firearms go.
They can be. There's a lot of good educational stuff on television and the internet, and a lot of it is crap. And you have to be able to sort through one or the other, but any practice with a firearm is better than no practice at all. I wanted to talk here at the end. I've kind of done this as the third story on this show. The Crossroads of the West gun show, which was scheduled for the pavilions downtown on December 21 and 22, has been canceled. We have listed that on our website as one of the upcoming gun shows. So hopefully you won't show up down there. What happened, it's not an anti-gun thing as near as I can tell. They're doing construction on a parking garage across the street, which is normally available for parking, and literally where they have all the equipment in the street, making the street wider and fixing up the entrance to what was the pavilions is now going to be a building, and pouring the foundation, and there was simply zero parking available. That's downtown, the pavilions. It's near the Rubo Brain Center, if you know the show I'm talking about. So the people that run the Crossroads show have had to cancel the show. They've told me, as of this morning, secured another venue that they're going to start using for shows in January, February, but I can't tell you what it was because they didn't tell me where it was, and they know I have a media show and I would blab it all over the place, so I would have a news break. But anyway, the news break is there's no show at the pavilions this upcoming weekend, and there will be some in the future. That leaves the very last gun show of the year in Southern Nevada, Clark County, at the Western Trails Gun Show, which is at the Palace Station Hotel and Casino. We have, I can say that, we have, that is a very nice show. It is always got a lot of vendors in it because it draws traffic from the Strip. Last show there, we had a bit of a problem because the marquee, the lit sign in front of the Palace Station says Sportsman's Expo, I think, or Sportsman's Show, Sportsman's Echo, something like that. Because the somebody higher up in the organization of stations decided it would look tacky to put gun show on their marquee. That's what I've been given to understand by those who claim to know. I don't know if I can see that possibly happening, but their signs they're putting up around town do say Western Trails Gun and Knife Show all over town and list the dates. So that is the last, that's after Christmas. It will be the last show before Governor Sisolak's new laws go into effect. Perhaps if we don't get enough Republican legislators, senators, and whatever to vote it into office, there are bills that are scheduled to become effective the first of the year, which will require multiple background checks for ammunition, the whole hodgepodge that the left is trying to get nationally. Sisolak basically duplicated. He's going to save us from our own guns. And so it's entirely possible, if you don't get out and vote, this last election, this after Christmas show at the Palace Station will be the last gun show, at least in Clark County, turning them loose to make their own regulations as Sisolak has expounds. You can check out all our recent shows at firedupwithboberwin.com. It's on the internet. It contains several dozen episodes. Please patronize our friends and supporters. We'll be back next Thursday on our website, firedupwithboberwin.com, and on YouTube at the American Guns and Glory Network. Numerous other websites, television, and radio stations. As I usually say, I get calls every day from people that are watching it somewhere that I didn't even know it was. When watching any media, all you need to do is click subscribe on your computer or your phone. You'll get a new show automatically every Thursday afternoon, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Remember, our logo merchandise and shirts and books are available at Battlefield Vegas, just behind Circus Circus on the Las Vegas Strip. And the audio portion is rebroadcast on the Nevada Talk Network all across Nevada, Saturdays at noon. Thank you for your support of Fired Up. We hope this survives the last gun show. Have a good week.